An Apple Plus original, Little America, is a brand new anthology based upon the real life stories of immigrants coming to America and setting up life there and their experiences. Now, when I read about this, it had a couple of things going for it and a couple of things that worried me. Who's the creator? Oh,
you should have looked this up ahead of time. Really.
I know. Hang on.
I know his wife is Emily V. Gordon. They're the two people who
Yes.
did The Big Sick, aren't they?
Yeah, and I just don't want to get his name wrong.
It's
Kumail
Kumail Nanjiani and
Yes.
Emily V. Gordon, and then there's a third gentleman as well. But they're the two Oscar-nominated screenwriters of The Big Sick.
So I like The Big Sick, and I like them as a pairing, and so that had it going for it. But I was worried that this might be one of those shows that I used to see a lot. Seem to be talking about living in America so much on this one, I apologise. But I worried about this being another one where they sort of sing the praises of how wonderful America is and nothing gets under my skin more than that. And actually it wasn't that, or at least these first 2 episodes weren't that. It was a very sweet show that I found a pleasure to watch. Michael, would you mind setting these up as you saw them fairly recently?
The first one is about a boy called Kabir. His parents run a hotel, and they come into some issues with staying in the country.
And things.
Yeah, and visa stuff. So they have to leave, and what's essentially we think is going to be like a month or two. They are essentially away years and years, and through this time, Kabir, who's precocious, as they say in the show, basically starts running the hotel as a young kid, and then just makes his way in as manager of the hotel.
Yeah, whilst trying to find a way of helping his parents in their predicament as well, by entering spelling bees and meeting Laura Bush and all that sort of thing, to try and speak to her face to face and get his parents back home. These are just half an hour as well at a time. We talked about Cheer being maybe a little over long. These are tight half-hour stories. So what's the second one?
The second one is, and I've forgotten the name of the main character, so it's like Gary's on the show all over.
Marisol.
Thank you. I know they chanted it enough times. I should know. Yeah, she's essentially doing cleaning job with her mum, but she finds focus. She ends up going to play some squash at a local club, and she's taken under the wing from the trainer, and it kind of basically turns her life around from being a bit of an upstart, her life going nowhere. She's essentially, spoiler,
because they're illegal immigrants, aren't they? So she hasn't. She doesn't feel like she's got a future because she hasn't got a social security number. She can't get a passport. So she's got this sort of listless nature about her, and doesn't. It's sort of very anti-authority.
So this is why you describe the shows, Matt.
Michael, had you heard of this before I put it on the list?
I hadn't, to be honest. No, I hadn't, and I didn't know what to expect. And I think going into it, the fact I had no idea what to expect is what made it surprising. I just thought these were both, the two I've seen, really gently paced, nuanced stories. They were interesting, amusing. The biggest thing about them is they were human.
Yes.
Because, if I'm talking about Dead Waterfell and The Strange as I Was earlier, we have a place for heightened.
Those are soulless, aren't they?
Yeah, there's a place for it, but I watched the whole series of Stranger, and when the credits rolled at the end, I was a bit like, oh, okay. Even though, in a sense, not much happens, a lot does happen. It's a strange thing. A lot does happen in terms of half an hour, because they come from struggling and to achieving something at the end. It's told so well and in such a interesting way that you just come out of it and think, and it's almost a feel-good sense to it as well.
Yeah,
and
they're inspired by true events, aren't they, as well?
The fact that they show you the real people at the end it's another way of hitting you in the stomach and going, wow, look at, and
the photographs.
The people that they've cast look so much like the people. I mean,
yes.
Marisol could have been the Marisol in that picture. I thought they cast her brilliantly. I have to agree. I was, as I say, not sceptical, but a little bit worried it might be, look, America's your saviour, and I can't speak for the rest of the series, but I just thought these two were so lovely, and lovely's not a term I use a lot, but they really were. I felt instantly connected to Kabir. I felt instantly connected to Marisol, and once you have me there, I will go on the journey with them, whatever happens. And I just thought, for half an hour, it really hit me.
In its own way, it's just really unexpected as well, because I went into each episode not knowing what any of them were about. It didn't matter, because within the first couple of minutes you go, right, I'm here, and you go along with it. And I was surprised that from one scene, Kabir is a child, and then the next scene he's like a 19, 20, 21-year-old.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel jarring, does it?
I think he was meant to be was he meant to be like a high schooler in the last one, wasn't he? I think
maybe, yeah.
For me, I preferred the Jaguar episodes to the first one, which is called The Manager. I think I would have liked to have been a bit longer. It felt a little bit rushed. I enjoyed being in that world, as Luke always says, and I loved her relationship with the John Ortiz character, the coach. There was a lot to unpick there in terms of the themes. You know, at one point she encounters at her party the woman who employs her mother, and it's very
that scene.
It's very awkward, and I just felt, you know, this could almost be like a film, couldn't it? You know, like this inspirational tale of this sort of listless teenager who finds the love of something that is almost like an upper class pursuit, and she goes there purely to get a free pair of shoes. Is the impetus for her and her friend turning up. I think casting primarily unknowns. You know, John Ortiz is an actor I recognise, but primarily unknown actors to play the younger characters whose stories these are based on. I had heard of this before. I think it was my suggestion, wasn't it? They'd actually advertised this at the cinema quite a bit, so I thought it may be worth discussing. And I agree with you. You know, these depictions of these minorities in America and it not always being ideal for them. Another part of this, the Marisol episode as well, is her brother who works as a day labourer, and you see him waiting to be picked for jobs and things. I just felt there was so much that they could go into in this episode. I really liked it as a piece of half-an-hour TV, and maybe if it had been longer, I would have lost interest in it. But I was left wanting more, which possibly is a good thing. But do you know what I mean? It's sort of,
I know what you mean.
I liked these characters so much.
I just think it proves if the stories are good and they're told well, you don't need the grand and the epic and the over the top. You can do it. You can just do it at a very steady pace with good acting, good scripts. It comes from a good place and of the heart. I know that sounds soppy or whatever, but it does. True. It comes from a very natural place.
And also it proves, maybe like Cheer in a way, like I said, is that if the story's compelling, I have no idea about squash. I have no desire to watch somebody play squash, but I really cared about this character and the world she was in, and about her achieving something, and about her winning the match. And I got really hot under the collar when she was getting mouthy and may lose and everything, or be disqualified. And before that, I had no interest in squash or anything like that. So it's proved
so this week you've learned about cheerleading and squash.
It's the most sporting week I've ever had in my life.
It's been quite a positive podcast.
I know, that might be the most positive one we've done for a long, long time. And I know I'm always the one that's negative. But all three of these shows, I would say Little America is absolutely joyous. And it's one of those things where I'm nervous to watch more in case they're not as good. But
but because it's an anthology series, in the same sense, like, you know, and I know Inside Number 9 is a totally different tone or whatever, but you can have a couple of episodes of Inside Number 9 series that I'm a bit about, but it doesn't matter, because when they're good, they're really good. And I think because this is going to cover different vast tales of immigrants and their experiences, I think there's some that connect with you more than other. I think it's more about whether it connects with you personally.
Will you try and keep up with these, Michael, or did you just enjoy the taste of these?
I will definitely follow up the rest of the series. Definitely.
It'll be interesting. I don't think Apple TV have promoted themselves very much in this country. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the only show I've seen sort of promoted. You know, obviously the morning show was something that they trailers quite heavily, but apart from that, I couldn't tell you anything else that was on Apple TV. Would you agree with that?
No, I would agree. But I listen to a lot of TV podcasts, so I sort of get confused.
But Michael, I would agree as a normal person, Michael, would you agree
I'm not a normal person. I'm not a normal person. I listen to a lot of TV podcasts too.
Okay, as me.
I think in the general public, I think you're right. I don't think it would register.
You don't hear people talking about it in the same way that they, you know, everyone at work talks about Netflix and what they're watching on Netflix. You know, Amazon Prime's the same, but I suppose a lot of people do use Amazon. I think a lot of people probably have got access to Amazon Prime, but just don't watch the shows on it. But there's certainly, you know, Apple. It seems to have been sort of a almost like a failure. You know, it hasn't had that big impact, and I think, you know, Disney Plus launching soon in the UK as well, you know, is going to get eclipsed even more. So
I think the problem with Apple Plus, as far as I understand it, they are literally just starting out with a few shows. There's no back catalogue or anything, is there? Like Netflix has,
They
you know,
haven't
when they
got
launched, they probably had
old
loads of
shows,
films
yeah.
and loads of TV series from BBC, Channel 4, or whatever. And Apple at the moment, as far as I understand it, it's just probably 5, 10, 15 shows. So that's quite difficult for people to go, well, I'm going to spend £6 a month.
yeah,
Especially if you
I
don't know what the
agree.
shows are,
almost feels like they rushed into it.
But we got to go back to how good this is. And
Yeah.
if you were going to try Apple TV Plus, perhaps for the morning show, or you just wanted something different to try, I can't speak for the rest of the series, but these 2 episodes we watched for the podcast were so good. I really enjoyed them. And it could have been a slog. It could have been sugary sweet rather than heartfelt. But these were tonally perfect.
the balance was spot on, I think.
Yeah, and I'm going to watch more of Little America.